Let's take a brief look at the Goat Simulator Heist DLC. This was the 9th paid heist DLC released for Payday 2, and as you've likely gathered, was a crossover with, of all things, Goat Simulator. Okay, yeah, that's goofy, but Goat Simulator was a pretty cute little sandbox ragdoll game all around, and it's no goofier than crossovers we've had prior or recently. At least this one was with another video game as opposed to a DJ or YouTubers. I tend to knock DLC for its ties to its source material when said source is in no way, shape, or form relevant to a bank robbing game. However, this is a bit of a weird case, as Goat Simulator, the game that is, was sort of its own thing. It defied any real genre tag aside from Goat. You can't really clash genres with a genreless game. Does that mean that the crossover is inherently, by default, a good thing? Oh, no. Crossovers for the sake of crossovers tend to lead towards the side of awkward content that misses the point of the material from both sources. That said, all Overkill had to do to make this crossover work was make a heist involving goats. Goats aren't inherently stupid or annoying, they're just goats. So you could very easily just ignore the source material and just take the heist at face value, despite the title being the Goat Simulator Heist. The heist is 2 days long, and you should be used to this by now, is loud only. Here's a rundown. Vlad was having cocaine smuggled in the anal canals of oh god, okay. Yes, alright. That is stupid, and there was a million other ways he could have done this, but Vlad being Vlad, this is absolutely in character for him, so it gets a pass. A rival cartel, the Hondurians, intercept the shipment, crashing the vehicle and letting loose the goats. So Vlad contracts the Payday gang to quickly arrive at the scene and secure the goats. They've run all around the surprisingly large city, as far as Payday maps go, hanging out in alleyways, cafes, trapped on scaffolding in the park. Some of them will require drills or saws to access due to being trapped in shuttered up shops or on top of light posts. Others will be stuck to ceiling fans or trapped in electrified construction zones, requiring the hacking of nearby power boxes to access. Their locations are random, with the exception of one goat who will always inexplicably be trapped at the top of a burning building. Since the firefighters have scattered from the gunfight, it's up to the Payday gang to be good Samaritans, relatively speaking. You will put out the fires using sprinkler systems. Clear debris in your way and secure the goat. You'll then be able to use a zipline to head back to the main city. Interestingly, these ziplines will let you ride them even when carrying loot, in this case, goats. Which is worth discussing. The goats don't function like any other loot in the game. Not only can they damage you when you try to pick them up, but they can be tossed far further and higher than any other loot. You can't sprint while carrying them, however, so you'll mostly be relying on the Longfellow for transportation. The core concept here is not only simple, but surprisingly unique. Drive around this large city, find goats, toss them in the trunk, and take them to the semi that Vlad has called in. After that, drive the Longfellow into the back and bugger off. The problem isn't in concept, it's in execution. The Longfellow can only carry 4 goats at a time, and there are upwards of 15 goats hiding in the city. And there's no way to know where the majority of them are without having played the heist before. You simply have to wander around by car or foot until you hear one. At the very least, when all but one of the goats have been secured, the last one will be highlighted, but beyond that, you're on your own. And all the while taking heavy fire from police. This leads me to my other major problem with this map, an obvious and inherent lack of cover. Shops with giant glass windows, short cars with giant glass windows, shelves with inexplicably and inexcusably giant glass windows. What is with Overkill's obsession with glass? Seriously, is glass just like indestructible in Sweden? Is this why they opt to make locations that were obviously designed to function as cover out of glass? When the best place to hole up in your map is an actively burning building, you have a problem. On higher difficulties, especially 1 down or whatever it'll be called after the difficulty rebalance, the only real option is to hide in one of the very few spots in the map with solid walls, wait for the assault to blow over, and quickly go on a barnyard scavenger hunt before taking cover again and waiting out the storm. Taking a step outside while cops are raining bullets down, or god forbid getting separated from your team at any point, is a death sentence. The first day of this heist almost always takes at least 10 minutes, and on Mayhem and Above often airs on the side of half an hour. However, once you've scoured the city, secured all of the adventurous, murderous goats, taken them all to the car and into the truck, all the while dealing with an above average cop spawn rate in wide open areas devoid of cover, you'll be done with day 1. The hard part is over. And so begins the unforgivingly torturous hardest part, day 2. Okay, so you're out in the middle of nowhere in a rundown abandoned farm. One of Vlad's men is readying himself to extract cocaine from the goats. Before he can dive in, however, the Hondarians arrive. In what is a very cool concept, you'll have a shootout with the cartel for a while rather than the police. However, this map's flaws suddenly become painfully clear. While there are no longer giant sheets of glass acting as the only walls between you and the cops, they've been replaced with giant holes in the walls and ceiling of the barn. The cartel will find every nook and goddamn cranny possible to shoot you from. Thankfully, there is an ample supply of boards available to patch up windows, along with explosive barrels to help dispatch of large groups of enemies, but both of these obviously don't last forever. After some time, the cartel will die off and police will arrive to see what all the fuss is about. In the meanwhile, Bane and Vlad have been coming up with an extraction plan for the goats. They opt for a Fulton system, sending in Vlad's brother, executive producer of PAYDAY 2, to fly by and drop off supplies for a Fulton cage. Here's the problem. All of this takes place outside. You know, on the farm. I'm not sure how Overkill looked at day 1 and went, I think we have too much cover here. There are still times when the player isn't being shot at. Let's make all of the objectives take place in a literal open field, surrounded by cop spawns, snipers, and SWAT turrets at every angle. Out in the middle of the open, in one of the handful of locations, you'll have to build a Fulton cage and secure all of the goats, which cops will actively attempt to steal inside of it. Then raise the Fulton balloon. Wait for Vladbro Listo to miss a couple of times before finally, hopefully, flying off with the goats. Keep in mind though, if even one goat isn't secured, you'll have to get a new cage dropped, reassemble it, and do the whole process over again. Meaning you can't just do objectives and hop back into the relative safety of the farmhouse. Oh no. You have to set up shop in the middle of a crossfire in order to progress, defending these animal mistakes with your life. Once all of the goats are secure, hop into the Longfellow to escape. You didn't think you were done yet, did you? Get in, losers, you're going driving. Drive down the old country road to escape the farmhouse. This part is actually pretty cool, and something that people wanted for a long time. Driving your own getaway car down randomly generated sections of the road, with cops ready to ambush you at every turn. It's great, unless the car gets stuck or something. Eventually, you'll reach a bridge, which is closed off and turned away. The controls to reopen the path are locked inside of a room with the security doors standing in your way. Hope you brought a saw or C4 on top of enough ammo and medical supplies to survive the coverless hellscape of the farmhouse and the final holdout at the bridge. You've not got much cover here, as helicopters will fly in to drop off troops and serve as perches for snipers. And just, you know, there's this spot. Apparently, this is some sort of breeding ground for SWAT officers, as they'll continuously rise from the dirt and lay down fire directly facing your objective. Once inside of the security room, you'll finally have some decent— Oh, god damn it! Did Walls murder Overkill's collective family or something? Why did they choose to actively remove the only cover this map has? Either way, defend this button while being swamped by cops and potential tear gas until the bridge fully rotates. Then hop back in Longfellow, hope to god it doesn't break down, and escape. At the very least, you'll earn a sizable payday for your venture. Would you believe me if I told you the least problematic part of Goat Simulator was the goats? Because after playing through this heist yourself, you very well might. In all seriousness, there are so many good ideas that went into this heist. The giant city map used for day 1 has lots of stores, nooks, and crannies that would be great for holding some bonus loot. But the most you get is a handful of ATMs, yeah, I'm sure you're just dying to bring a saw to this day, and some cash registers. Having randomly generated objectives and map events in your way to secure the loot would be great for variants if you didn't get to see pretty much every variant every time, simply due to the volume of goats this heist contains. Driving around the city to go heisting would be cool if your vehicle could carry more than a fraction of the required loot at a time, wasn't made out of tinfoil, allowed those in the backseat to use their guns, or handled more like a car and less like Superman in a bad N64 game. This whole day would be cool if it wasn't overpopulated with cop and sniper spawns and had some goddamn cover. I'd love to see a revised version of this map that added some boxier trucks, solid walls, and other props to break line of sight used for a different heist. I'm thinking something like Stealing Christmas, going from store to store with optional loot everywhere, but just on a much bigger scale. Day 2, on the other hand, was doomed from the start. It's simply not a style of map that can work in PAYDAY 2. There isn't any cover, but really, how could they they have made cover in an open field. There are places that they clearly tried, with giant hay bales and high cobble walls. However, all of this is pointless due to a barrage of bullets from the high ground sprawled across the edges of the map. Being shot with pinpoint accuracy by cops hidden in leaves an acre away while you think you're in cover simply isn't fun. The bridge segment could have done with some dumpsters, advertisement signs, phone booths, big boxy trucks, any solid walls between you and the main line of fire. Even when there is a room you can bunker down in, the second you activate the objective, that cover literally goes out the window. At what point did Overkill get so bad at understanding how to make cover that effectively shields you? Heists in the first game, for the most part, had plenty of places to break line of sight and fire pot shots at enemies. Shipping containers, high brick walls, elevation changes, things that stopped cops too far away to properly aim at from chipping your health away. What happened? Well, regardless, a lot of effort did go into the maps visually, if not mechanically. However, that has its flaws as the diesel engine shows its age. Not only does this heist run incredibly poorly on otherwise capable machines, but this engine doesn't render foliage, we'll say, successfully, and tends to crash frequently when too much is going on, meaning the entirety of day 2. The amount of times I was attempting to complete this heist on one down and I crashed halfway through day 2 is too high to count. No mods, no nothing, just random Payday crashes. To oversimplify, many good ideas went into this heist with the larger scale, driving, and scavenger hunt. However, a lack of cover, requirements of all loot, amplified cop and sniper spawns, and performance problems turn Goat Simulator from a creative, larger scale endeavor to the most difficult heist to complete in a technical, metaphorical, and literal sense. I'll talk about the rest of this pack's content and my thoughts on it as a whole right after the break. Welcome back. Let's move on to the weaponry this pack provides, namely the JSPS 12-gauge shotgun. Originally a mediocre reskin of the locomotive, this weapon has undergone plenty of changes to make it more similar to the Judge, but unique all the same. Offering top-tier shotgun damage and the highest mag capacity of any shotgun with similar damage, tied with the Breaker 12-gauge but in the secondary slot, this weapon is great for dispatching high-health enemies on top-tier difficulties. Its downsides manifest themselves as the individual shell reload as opposed to the Judge's revolver-style variants and low maximum ammo. However, its pickup rate, while not breathtaking, is enough to keep the gun satisfied provided you don't over-rely on it. I wouldn't bring it as my only weapon, i.e. alongside a saw or what have you, but as a backup to a sniper or assault rifle, it's a great choice. I would have liked to see some more modification options in a similar vein to the Jocelyn's ammo pouch, but all the JSPS really gets is concealment boosters that still aren't enough to match the Judge's inherently superior dodge capabilities. Regardless, I can say with confidence that the JSPS is the best feature of this DLC. To be fair, with competition like this, it's hard to be a loser. 4 melee weapons so worthless they aren't even worth naming. None of them even have maximum concealment, despite 2 of them very clearly meriting it. More garbage to add to the pile. Speaking of, have some animal masks. They have tongues. It's cute, I guess. I don't know, teach their own, I suppose. I'd likely be more okay with them if they weren't locked behind achievements that wildly range in difficulty. Farmer Miserable, for instance, requires you to secure each individual goat in its own Fulton cage on day 2 on Overkill or above. That noise. And that's just about everything. So, was the Goat Simulator Heist Pack a good addition? I find my position to be more nuanced on this than usual. On release, absolutely not. The heist was a crash fest of misery and goats. I mean, it still is now, but we're more accustomed to it. But when it was a full-price DLC with a mediocre reskin weapon and a heist that's far too difficult for its own good, it wasn't worth the keyboard it was coded on. However, with a newly buffed JSPS and being just another part of Ultimate Edition, it's hard for me to call the pack bad as a whole. It's just weird, off-pace, different, horribly made in some places, sure, but creatively made in others. It's like when weird Atari games tried to break the mold but couldn't due to technical restraints and a lack of knowledge. It's the biggest challenge standing between players earning their one-down masks, and even if it earns that title simply by poor map design, it's a title worth taking note of all the same. Whether that's a good or bad thing, well, that's on you to decide for yourself. For me, while it is by no means my favorite heist, there is a decent amount of original ideas there. Topped off with decent payout and an experience count arguably worth the absurd difficulty, I see Goat Sim as being an unique addition. Not good, definitely not average, but not bad either. It's just well, it's GOAT is what it is. I'll give it a GOAT out of 10. That's everything, and hey, if you liked the video, maybe consider subscribing. I appreciate the love. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.